Part 20. I Can See the Laws of Things. Author, Yitiao Xuanhuan. Chapter 191. East Coast, Wind City. This city is a coastal city located in the eastern part of Kyushu region. It is also one of the few cities that is still controlled by the Savior Group in the past few decades. The owner of the city was Li Changfeng, who had been killed by Lin En. On the city wall, Li Changfeng's son Li Yuanwu looked solemnly in the direction of the ocean. Behind him are hundreds of top powerhouses trained by his father over the past few decades. After receiving a call from his father, he mobilized the entire Changfeng city. Now, the city is ready for war. Master, the explosion just outside the sea area was. A general said solemnly. He had an ominous guess, but he still didn't want to believe it. Li Yuanwu said solemnly, my father should be dead, now we have to be mentally prepared. The general was shocked and said, young master. Li Yuanwu said solemnly, the plane that fell from the sky was the passenger plane that my father took before leaving. He hasn't replied to us yet, which proves that he is probably dead. He turned his head suddenly, looked at the countless soldiers in the city expressionlessly, and said, have you notified my uncles? The town general clasped his fists and said, we have been notified, they are on their way here, young master, please rest assured, they are all the strongest men of the same era as Master Changfeng, and, what happened in Qingcheng, let them very angry. Li Yuanwu nodded, but he did not let go of the stone in his heart. He felt uneasy, and waves of piercing uneasiness swept through his body. Because he had no idea what kind of terrifying existence his father's group of people had provoked. Hundreds of top town generals all died in Qingcheng overnight. Such a thing is enough to cause shock to the whole world. At this moment, Li Yuanwu suddenly saw an old man with disheveled hair flying crazily in their direction in the night sky over the eastern sea. The strong men in the city also noticed the figure. They immediately raised their heads vigilantly and prepared for battle. Wait a minute, Li Yuanwu frowned. He looked at the figure in the sky and said, it's Uncle Wang Tongguang. The next moment, the old man in the sky suddenly landed on the city wall. He stood up crazily, his eyes full of fear. Li Yuanwu immediately led people up, helped the old man up, and frowned. Uncle Tongguang, why are you alone? Where are my father and the others? The old man's eyes were full of fear and he said, dead. Everyone is dead. As soon as these words came out, the expressions of everyone around him changed drastically. Li Yuanwu's eyes narrowed and he said, sure enough. The old man collapsed on the ground and trembled, I have no strength anymore. That is a demon. He will not let me go. He has chased and killed us all. I am already the last one. He will never let me go, let me go. Everyone around them was trembling in their hearts. Although they did not know this old man, the strength of a top town general exuded from him was extremely clear. To make a top town general fear like this, how terrifying is the devil in his mouth. Li Yuanwu said solemnly, don't worry, Uncle Tongguang, this is the city of Changfeng. You will be safe here. I don't believe it. He really dares to openly fight with our entire city. Li Yuanwu's words instantly inspired everyone present. Everyone's eyes flashed with fierceness. That's right, there are so many of them, how can they be afraid of just one of them? Wang Tongguang said tremblingly, you are wrong. You are absolutely wrong. In front of that person, no matter how many people you have, it will have no effect. And the next moment, just after he finished speaking, his eyes froze. In an instant, his eyes were filled with huge fear. Li Yuanwu quickly helped him up and said, Uncle, what's wrong with you? Wang Tongguang looked at the sky tremblingly and murmured, he's here. The hearts of everyone present were suddenly shocked, and they suddenly raised their heads to the sky. In an instant, their faces changed drastically. High in the night sky, I don't know when, a ghost-like figure stood there, holding his shoulders, looking down at all of them indifferently like a god. The cold moonlight shot down from behind him, and instantly, the hearts of everyone present felt cold. Lin An said indifferently. "You're the last one." In an instant, Lin An reached out to Wang Tongguang, who was standing on the city wall. Wang Tongguang immediately felt that he was locked by a huge aura. He instantly fell into a dark abyss and screamed crazily. "Don't kill me! Don't kill me!" Buzz. There was a sharp sound that cut through the air. The next moment, they saw a biting stream of frost burst out from his hand, heading towards Wang Tongguang at an unimaginable speed. The speed was so fast that even the space was split straight in the middle. Li Yuanwu stood up suddenly and roared. "Let me see who dares to kill him in front of me." The surrounding town generals gritted their teeth, and instantly exploded with blood and energy, rushing towards the cold current bursting out from Lin An's hand. Killing people on their territory and in front of them, isn't this not taking them seriously? If he succeeds, then it will be a disaster. The next moment, the blood and energy bursting out of more than a dozen town generals collided with the icy cold current in Lin An's hand. Boom! A huge roar that could be heard throughout the city. The dozen town generals retreated one after another, their internal organs were shaken, and half of them immediately vomited scarlet blood. They looked at the indifferent figure standing in the sky in shock. This blow, the man didn't even move. Who is he? How can his power be so strong? And at the moment of their confrontation, Wang Tongguang found the opportunity and rushed into the city in horror. At that moment, he disappeared in the night of the city. The sky fell into silence for a moment. Lin An stood in the sky, looking indifferently at the direction where Wang Tongguang fled, and slowly said, "Are you going to be my enemy?" This sentence was very calm, even as calm as a simple question. But to the ears of others, it was a huge threat and murderous intent, because the greatest contempt was calmness. "Master, what should we do?" a town general panted and asked. Li Yuanwu's eyes flickered, staring at Lin An in the sky, and said, "I don't believe that he really dares to attack the people in our entire city." He suddenly raised his head and gritted his teeth. "I don't know who you are, but I tell you, this is the city of riding the wind. Not everyone can be presumptuous here. If you want to kill him, then you have to get through us first. Can you kill all of us in the city?" In an instant, at the moment when Li Yuanwu said that sentence, they suddenly saw that there was a subtle change in the sky. The clouds in the sky stopped. All the winds stopped. Even the moonlight in the sky was slowly dimming. It was as if the time of the whole world had stopped at that moment. The next moment, they heard an indifferent voice from the sky. "Then, kill everyone in your city. I can see the laws of things." Author, Yitiao Xianyue. Chapter 192. At the same time, Chengdu. There was a loud bang at the door of the Chen family manor. The Chen family's door was completely blown open by the huge impact. A dozen gatekeepers flew out and hit the ground heavily. They vomited blood and let out shrill screams. "Where's celebrity Chen Dao? Come out!" The next moment, 3 old men in brocade robes and splendid robes strode into the door of the Chen family with angry expressions on their faces. Behind them, followers with strong auras swarming in one after another. They almost surrounded the entire Chen family's front yard. The Chen family members gritted their teeth, their eyes flickering, and kept retreating under their pressure. There were sounds of footsteps in the distance. I saw Chen Daoming leading a dozen Dharma gods from the Chen family walking out of the backyard. He looked at the 3 old men who broke into the Chen family manor and frowned. "Mr. Ling, Mr. Luo, and Bailey Dharma god, what do you mean?" Those 3 old men were the heads of the Luo family, the Ling family and the Bailey family, the 3 highest-ranking world-class gods in the god capital of the 9 provinces. Coupled with Chen Daoming, 4 world-class experts gathered here today. The patriarch of the Ling family looked at Chen Daoming seriously and said, "Chen Daoming, I think you'd better give us a reasonable explanation now." Chen Daoming raised his eyebrows and said, "What's the explanation for why you are so mobilized?" The patriarch of the Bailey family suddenly stepped forward, pointed at Chen Daoming, and gritted his teeth and said, "Don't pretend to be false to us. Let me ask you, just tonight, hundreds of powerful ancestors from our Zhou domain were raped by your Chen family in Qingcheng. Kill, what do you want?" The three world-class clan leaders all squinted their eyes, with fierce lights shooting out of their eyes. If they could watch the Chen family grow bigger before, but now, they know that if they don't stand up, the Chen family will do whatever they want even more. Because many of the top town generals killed by Lin En were members of their three major families. The death of such 100 top town generals can be described as a heavy blow to the three major families. And this matter was done by the Chen family, a thorn in their side and a thorn in their flesh. In their eyes, this was a clear declaration of war with their three major families. Chen Daoming looked at the three of them and took a deep breath. This is also one of the reasons why he has not launched troops against those people for 10 years. Because those people are like tarsal maggots, having overt or covert relationships with all the forces in the entire Kyushu region. Pull one hair and move the whole body. It is easy to kill them, but it is even more difficult to solve the big earthquake caused by killing them. Because he knew that many members of the Savior were attached to the other three major families. Once we attack them, the fragile relationship between their Chen family and the other three major families will be quickly severed. Chen Daoming opened his eyes, looked deeply at the three old men, and said, "It seems that the three of you are here to force me into the palace." The head of the Ling family narrowed his eyes and said, "Chen Daoming, we respect you. If it hadn't been for you leading the three of us into the divine capital, we wouldn't have been able to reach the high position we have now. So over the years, we put you first in everything, but if you want to use your power to harm the interests of our three major families, then we will never agree." Chen Daoming raised his head, with waves of coldness emanating from his eyes. In an instant, waves of terrifying power fluctuations spread out from his body. The patriarchs of the three major families were immediately restrained by the terrifying power fluctuations, and they all took a step back, their expressions changing slightly. Just from the slight fluctuation of power emanating from Chen Daoming, they could clearly feel that Chen Daoming's true strength was now far superior to their three major clan leaders. Chen Daoming said expressionlessly, "You three should know very well that back then they broke into my Chen family and killed my wife while I was away from the 9 provinces territory. If such a blood feud is not avenged, it will be unforgivable. Do you think that I, Chen Daoming, have forgotten what happened back then? Or do you think that I can swallow my anger and let the hatred of wife killing be brushed aside like this?" The heads of the three major families all had their eyes flickering, and fierce gleams shot out from their eyes. The head of the Ling family said solemnly, "Chen Daoming, we are also heartbroken by the death of Master Qingxian, but Chen Daoming, you are now the supreme ruler of our Zhou territory, and all your actions should be based on our Zhou territories. The interests and the overall situation are correct. They are the pinnacle of combat power in our Kyushu region besides us. Now if you take away 100 of them, our Kyushu region will definitely be severely damaged. How do you ask our Kyushu region to continue to maintain the status of a superpower in the international field?" Chen Daoming smiled indifferently and said, "Do you think that someone who has the ability to kill 100 of them can't replace their position in the 9 provinces?" The expressions of the heads of the three major families changed slightly, and their fists clenched subconsciously. Chen Daoming put his hands behind his back and said expressionlessly, "My eldest daughter Kimeng has now broken through to the position of Dharma God. I can tell you the truth that she also participated in this operation against the Savior group, and this operation is the best proof of her strength." He suddenly turned his head and said deeply, "And I, Chen family Tianzun Lin En, Am also sorry to tell you that he also participated in this operation against the members of the Savior, and he alone is enough to destroy those 100 people. The fact that his eldest daughter is here is just the icing on the cake, because from beginning to end, this is just a one-man show for Lin. The expressions of the heads of the other 3 major families are getting worse and worse, and their eyes are so gloomy that they are almost bleeding. Chen Daoming said indifferently, the wings have worms, so they naturally need to be cleaned up. Our Jiuzhu region will have new feathers to take their place, and facts have proven that Lin An and my eldest daughter are already capable of becoming the top level in the Jiuzhu region. Representatives of combat power, after this battle, they will become famous all over the world. The head of the Ling family said gloomily, Chen Daoming, I'm afraid your family will dominate the Jiuzhu territory now. Chen Daoming smiled lightly and said, what does Mr. Ling mean by this? Everyone knows that our Jiuzhu territory is governed by our 4 major families. Our Chen family is only one of the 4. How can one family be the only one? The head of the Ling family gritted his teeth, the veins on his forehead were exposed, and the anger in his eyes almost burst out. But he still suppressed his anger forcefully. Because he has seen that the Chen family is already at war, and Chen Daoming's staff, who are at least above the realm of the Dharma God, are already looking fierce. Once they take action, it will inevitably turn into an endless war. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. I can see the laws of things. Author, Yitiao Xuanhuan. Chapter 193. Especially the moment when Chen Daoming emitted power fluctuations, they clearly felt the gap between themselves and him. Now is definitely not the time to break up. Let's go, the head of the Ling family gritted his teeth, turned around suddenly, and led the other 2 heads and everyone towards the door of the Chen family. Chen Daoming watched them leave. Although there was no expression on his face, his eyes gradually became serious. Mr. Chen Daoming. A Dharma God frowned and stepped forward to say something, but he hesitated. Chen Daoming slowly closed his eyes and said, back then, before the 4 of us got the big position, we were as close as brothers and shared the same hatred. But now the world has changed, and the relationship between me and them is now only a window. The paper has not been broken, but once the skin is broken, the Kyushu territory, which has finally been peaceful, will probably cause another bloody storm. The Dharma God stepped forward, cupped his fists and said, if they are unkind, then don't blame us for being unjust. We will follow Mr. Chen Daoming forever. If they dare to start a war, then we will stay with them until the end. Chen Daoming shook his head, took a deep breath, turned and walked towards the backyard. But at this moment, they suddenly saw Chen Daoming's body swaying slightly and coughing violently. The expressions of the surrounding Dharma gods suddenly changed, and they quickly stepped forward to help Chen Daoming's body. Mr. Chen Daoming, what's wrong with you? Master. Are you okay? Chen Daoming shook his head, pushed away the crowd, and slowly circulated the power in his body. The turbulent blood on his face slowly stabilized. The faces of the people around him were all pale, because they had never seen Chen Daoming look like just now. In their eyes, Chen Daoming has been the most powerful man in the world for decades. He is the god of the 9 provinces, and he has never been weak. After a long time, Chen Daoming took a deep breath and slowly opened his eyes. Looking at the worried Dharma gods around him, he laughed and waved. It's all gone. I'm fine. I'm just overworked these past few days and the blood and energy in my body are out of balance. I just need to rest for a few days. Everyone around him breathed a sigh of relief, but it was hard to let go of the heart that had been mentioned. After Chen Daoming left, the surrounding Dharma gods also dispersed one by one. But the remaining confidants of Chen Daoming stood there, looking worriedly at the direction in which Chen Daoming left. What's going on with the head of the family's body? A Dharma god asked worriedly. I think you have also felt the turmoil in your blood just now. It is definitely not just overwork, as the head of the family said. Another gray-haired old man took a deep breath and said, you should all know that the head of the family has been attacking the demigod realm in recent months. The expressions of the surrounding magic gods changed and they said, could it be? The old man solemnly said, ever since the head of the family had a premonition that the great change in the world was not over, but that the second stage of change was about to begin, he had devoted all his energy to practice. He wanted to do it in the second stage. Before the next great change begins, let yourself be able to break through world-class barriers and achieve the status of demigod. Because he had a vague premonition that the disaster brought about by the second world change would be difficult even for a world-class Dharma god. For the survival of the 9 provinces region, the 9 provinces region must fight against the disaster before the world changes. There is a demigod. He took a deep breath, closed his eyes, and said, however, it is not so easy to break through to the position of demigod. The price of failure is really too high. Meanwhile, ride the wind. Just after Lin An said those words, the expressions of all the powerful men in Changfeng City changed drastically. Especially Li Yuanwu. He originally wanted to threaten Lin An and use the power of the whole city to protect his father's friend, but who would have thought that Lin An would dare to say such a thing? The next moment, they suddenly saw clusters of scarlet clouds suddenly flashing in the distant sky. At first, those red clouds and mist were just a red line outside the horizon, but as time went by, the area of the red mist became larger and larger, getting closer and closer. In just a few minutes, the entire sky above Changfeng City was covered by scarlet clouds. What the hell is that? Li Yuanwu looked at the sky tremblingly. He suddenly felt uneasy in his heart. It was as if countless pairs of ferocious eyes were staring at him, to devour him completely. A town general suddenly remembered something, his pupils dilated instantly, and he said in fear, no. It's impossible. That's a swarm of insects, a swarm of scarlet worms. He suddenly raised his head, looked at the black figure in the sky, and roared. You're Lin. As soon as these words came out, the expressions of the people around him changed instantly. Li Yuanwu's eyes showed an expression of extreme astonishment. Lin. Is he talking about the Lin An who suppressed the insect mother during the insect swarm incident a few months ago and led an army of 100,000 to sweep across the entire Yu kingdom? Impossible. This is absolutely impossible. The next moment, the insect swarm in the sky suddenly separated. I saw countless scarlet insect swarms rushing towards the ground, twisting and twisting their muscles and bones, and finally transformed into powerful insect men one after another. Li Yuanwu's face turned pale instantly. Because he saw that the faces of those insect people were very similar to those of his father's friends. They were all members of the saviors who were devoured by the insect swarm. These were puppets created by the insect swarm after absorbing their essence and life wheel. The next moment, Lin An said indifferently, kill them. In an instant, the faces of the people on the city wall changed drastically. They immediately saw in horror that after receiving the order, those insect people immediately rushed towards them like hungry wolves. Puff! 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 In just a moment, dozens of their grandmasters and town generals turned into corpses in the sharp mouthparts of those insect people. No! Don't! Ah! Quick! Stop them! We must not let them break through our defense line. How could it be? How could there be such a terrible monster? No! The shrill screams instantly resounded through the sky. Those strong men looked at the scene in horror. Those insects broke through their defenses in an instant. They didn't expect that he would massacre them. He really wanted to kill the whole city. Stop! Li Yuanwu stretched out his hand tremblingly and shouted at Lin An in the sky. At this moment, he was really scared. From birth to now, He has never been as scared as today. He thought that Lin En had some reservations when facing their entire city, but now he found that he was wrong. Very wrong. He still underestimated his character. There is nothing in this world that can restrain him. He staggered forward, looked at Lin En in horror, and trembled. "We surrender, we will never hinder you again, please spare our lives." He had never begged for mercy from anyone, but now, under this huge fear and disparity in power, he succumbed. Lin En gently moved his fingers. The insects that were killing people stopped immediately. Sticky liquid dripped from their brutal mouthparts. The bloodthirsty glare in their eyes almost paralyzed the people lying on the ground. In just 30 seconds, half of Li Yuanwu's strong men were killed or injured. From this, we can imagine the huge gap in strength between them. Li Yuanwu stood there trembling. On the city wall, everyone trembled as they looked at the man who was walking slowly. The fear that burst out from the bottom of their hearts made their whole bodies tremble. Lin En said nothing, and he slowly fell from the sky. Step by step, he walked towards the closed door, which suddenly turned into countless fragments. Under the gaze of countless people, he slowly walked into Changfeng City. In the city, warriors and mages surrounded Lin En one after another, but their eyes were all wrapped in great fear. Every time Lin En took a step forward, they took a step back, and no one dared to take action. Lin En said indifferently, "If you don't hinder me, I have no interest in wasting time with you. Now, get out of the way. I can see the laws of things." Author, Yitiao Xianyue. Chapter 194. Lin En's voice was very calm, so calm that no emotion could be heard. But to the ears of those powerful men, it sounded like the biggest threat. On top of the city wall, a town general clenched his fists and said tremblingly, "Young master." Li Yuanwu stared at Lin En, the anger and humiliation in his eyes almost bursting out. But he was still patient. Because he knew that if he really took action now, their entire city would probably be burned to the ground. "Make way," he trembled. The soldiers surrounding Lin En immediately ran towards both sides of the road, and in an instant, a broad road opened in front of Lin En. Lin En walked towards the city alone with an expressionless face. He raised his head indifferently, looked at the whole city, and said indifferently, "You know you can't escape, are you still going to continue to play cat and mouse games with me? If you come out by yourself, I will let you know how to die, but if you are caught by me, I don't mind making your death more painful." Lin stretched out his hand expressionlessly and moved his fingers slightly. In an instant, countless insect swarms swarmed towards the city. At this moment, in another building in Changfeng City, an old man crawled into a house. The noise in the room immediately alerted the house. The sleeping male owner got up in confusion and turned on the flashlight to shine into the living room. What? Click. Almost instantly, a divine light pierced the man's throat, and his body fell heavily to the ground. The old man gasped, quickly came to the bed, picked up the phone, and pressed a phone number tremblingly. He had heard what Lin En had said to the whole city, and he knew that Lin En had now entered the city and was now looking for him throughout the city. Once he is found, the consequences will be disastrous. The old man quickly picked up the phone and said tremblingly, "Mr. Ling. Mr. Ling. Help. Help." The next moment, an old man's gloomy voice came from the other side of the phone. "Only people from the Savior know my number." "What number are you?" The old man trembled and said, "I am Wang Tongguang, the 51st member of the Savior." "Mr. Ling, our people are all dead now. Li Changfeng is dead, Shang Yongji is dead, this time we are going to Qingcheng. I am the only one left alive. Mr. Ling, you must save me." The head of the Ling family said solemnly, "Where are you now?" Wang Tongguang trembled all over and said, "I'm in Changfeng City in the south. Lin En is hunting for me all over the city right now." It's only a matter of time before he finds me. Mr. Ling, I don't want to die. I really don't want to die. The head of the Ling family suddenly gritted his teeth and said, Lin En. It's that Lin En again. I will never let this matter go unchecked. I will immediately send people to Changfeng City in the south. No matter what, you must not be found by him. Did you hear that clearly? Wang Tongguang was about to speak, but at this moment, a sudden change occurred. He suddenly felt the ground shaking, and the next moment, the entire building he was in was torn apart from the middle. Wang Tongguang's eyes instantly showed great fear. Countless scarlet insect swarms surrounded the building where he was, and Lin, dressed in black robes, slowly appeared in front of him. Found you. These words instantly caused him to fall into a dark pool. A sense of fear suddenly enveloped his whole body. Mr. Ling's voice of hello and hello kept coming from the phone, but no one answered. You, how did you find me? Wang Tongguang shivered and backed away. He knew that he was doomed. Lin said slowly, you shouldn't have made that call. The whole city is under my control. The next moment, Lin stretched out her hand, grabbed his throat, and lifted him up from the ground. Wang Tongguang kept struggling and tore Lin En's hand hard, but Lin En's hands were like iron pliers, leaving him no chance to resist. Wang Tongguang gritted his teeth, his eyes already turned scarlet. Lin En, let me tell you, Mr. Ling will never let you go. You have killed so many of us, and you can't even hope to gain a foothold in the 9 provinces. Lin En looked into his eyes closely and said, you have to fight to gain a foothold by yourself. The next moment, there was a click, and Wang Tongguang's neck was directly broken by one of Lin En's hands, and his hands instantly fell down weakly. Wang Tongguang's soul immediately turned into long blue streams and was swallowed by the unicorn jade heart on Lin En's chest. Lin closed her eyes and took a long breath. And just when his long breath fell, suddenly dark clouds filled the sky and thunderous thunder came. Even the surrounding space trembled. Everyone in the entire city felt the sudden throbbing. Li Yuanwu and the others turned their heads to me in astonishment and looked into the depths of the city. The sudden throbbing in their hearts made their whole bodies feel cold for no apparent reason. This is... Li Yuanwu said tremblingly. The next moment, Lin En slowly opened his eyes, and the purple light in his eyes became deeper and deeper. Because at the moment when he absorbed his soul, Lin officially became a top-town general. After absorbing the power of that small world, he had achieved the position of general. The killing that night allowed him to absorb the soul power of hundreds of top-town commanders, which brought unimaginable benefits to his soul again. In just one night, he broke through a great realm. He achieved the position of town commander. At this moment, no one knows how powerful his power has become. The entire insect swarm is cheering around Lin En, celebrating Lin En's further improvement in strength. But Lin En's face still has no expression, and he did not show any excitement because of his advancement in strength. He slowly reached out his hand, took the phone, and said lightly, "It seems that you have lost this time." In an instant, after hearing Lin En's voice on the other side of the phone, Ling Lao's face changed instantly. He instantly recognized this voice. It was Lin En. This man he hated so much. He gritted his teeth, his eyes red as he said, "You killed them all." Lin En said slowly, "Even I didn't expect that the so-called 100 saviors would be so vulnerable. I thought they might give me a little desire to fight." Lin En raised his head indifferently and said, "In the end, they still made me feel bored like an ant. I can see the laws of things." Author, Yitiao Xianyue. Chapter 195. As soon as these words came out, the violence in Mr. Ling's heart almost burst out instantly. This naked mockery was like a slap in the face. "Do you know who I am?" Mr. Ling's voice almost bled. Lin En said slowly, "Ling Changfeng, the patriarch of the Ling family and one of the 4 world-class magic gods in Chengdu, You planned 2 assassinations against me in Jianghai City and Jiangdu. How could I not know about you? As soon as these words came out, Mr. Ling's expression suddenly changed. Although both of those 2 things failed, he did not reveal any flaws. How could he know that he was behind those 2 incidents? Lin En said slowly, "You have been targeting me since I first started in Jianghai City, and I have always remembered this matter. You must know that I am a person who must retaliate, so now I can give you a chance. Ling Changfeng, I will wait for you here. If you want to kill me, come to me immediately, otherwise. The next time we meet, I'll be ready to slaughter you like a dog." After saying that, Lin slowly crushed the phone in his hand. The phone in his hand instantly turned into countless dust and flew into the sky. The capital of gods, the Ling family. Boom! There was a huge explosion. The main hall of the Ling family collapsed instantly and turned into countless fragments. Lin En. I, Ling Changfeng, swear to kill you. The next moment, among the billowing dust, an old man with disheveled hair rushed out. His eyes were blood red, and the expression on his face was ferocious, even slightly distorted due to excessive ferocity. The strong men from the Ling family who came over after hearing the noise changed their expressions when they saw the appearance of their family leader. They have never seen their family leader so angry. "Master, what happened?" The eldest elder of the Ling family quickly stepped forward, but even he only dared to get closer to him for more than 10 meters, because the aura bursting out of Ling's body had caused the surrounding space to collapse. Ling Changfeng's eyes were blood red and he said, "You guys stay here, I'll go back as soon as I can. If I don't kill Lin En today, it will be difficult to relieve the hatred in my heart." The next moment, he will soar into the sky. When the Ling family members around them saw what was happening, they were instantly anxious, especially when they heard that their family was going to kill Lin En. The people around him didn't care whether the aura he exuded would hurt themselves, so they all stepped forward. "Master, you have to calm down. At this time, if you really kill that Lin En, it will be like starting a war directly with the Chen family. You have also seen Chen Daoming's strength. Going to war with him now is definitely the best option. Unwise behavior. You must consider the overall situation." Ling Changfeng's eyes spurted blood with anger. He suddenly raised his head and roared to the sky, his voice full of unwillingness. "Chen Dao is more famous than me. I respect him as my former eldest brother, and I can tolerate it. But even that Lin En dares to despise me. If I don't kill him, then how can I, Ling Changfeng, be a world-class Dharma god?" The next moment, he was about to leave the Ling family and head south to fight with Lin En. The people around him became anxious instantly. They could tell at a glance that their family leader was blinded by anger. That Lin En must have contacted their family through some means and said some provocative words, otherwise how could they make their family head so angry? At this moment, a man in his 50s came out and said, "Brother, even if you really want to kill him, you don't need to do it yourself. You can just leave this matter to me." Ling Changfeng turned to look at the man. His anger was slowly contained, but it was still difficult to calm down. That man's name was Ling Zhang, and he was Ling Changfeng's younger brother. His energy had already reached perfection, and he was just one step away from becoming a national-level martial god. Ling Changfeng said solemnly, "You don't need to intervene in this matter." Ling Zhang said deeply, "Brother, you represent our Ling family, but I am different. I don't have a position in the 9 provinces. If I kill Lin En, if the Chen family pursues the case, you can shirk all responsibilities if it comes to me, just say that this is my personal behavior and has nothing to do with the Ling family." Ling Changfeng gritted his teeth and said, "If this is really going to be the case, how will you gain a foothold in the Kyushu region in the future?" Ling Zhang suddenly turned his head and said, "Of course I can't escape death, so how can I talk about establishing a foothold? But brother, You have also seen that Lin An's growth rate has far exceeded our expectations. If we continue to let him grow like this, if he goes on, I'm afraid it won't be long before he becomes invincible, and by that time, it will be too late. He suddenly narrowed his eyes and said, so, no matter what the cost, we must not let this serious problem in our Ling family grow. One Chendiaming is difficult enough to deal with, and we in the Jiuzhou region don't need a second one. Ling Changfeng looked deeply at his brother. For a long time, he suddenly stretched out his hand and grabbed his shoulder, gritting his teeth and said, okay, if you really kill that Lin En, you will be a hero of my Ling family. Brother, I will never forget you. Ling Zhang nodded, and the next moment, he turned around suddenly and walked towards the south with a gloomy look. His voice came rolling. Tomorrow morning, I will come to see Lin En with his head. Anyone who dares to insult my Ling family will be killed by me. South, the city riding the wind. Lin En stood on the highest spire in the city. The night sky was crimson, and the blood-red light reflected by the insect swarm shone straight on his expressionless face. And below the spire, there were violent insects one after another. All the strong men in the Wind City gathered at the edge of the city. They gritted their teeth and stared at Lin En in the center of the city, but no one dared to move. No one knew why he stayed here after killing Li Tongguang. What was he waiting for? Or who was he going to kill? At this moment, a white stream of light passed through the night sky, and the stream of light slowly stopped in the sky next to the spire. In the stream of light, the outline of the woman could be vaguely seen. She was wearing a silver-white robe and holding a sword that looked like it was made of ice. Lin En looked at the sky in the north and said, the great revenge should be avenged, what are you still doing here? Qi Meng opened her lips slightly and said, I came to see you. Lin En said lightly, I have already said that there is no room for redemption in our relationship. Qi Meng took a deep breath and looked at him with a complicated look, with ripples dancing in her icy eyes. At least we are on the same front now, aren't we? We were comrades in arms before, and we can be comrades now. Lin En said lightly, it's up to you. What no one noticed was that a glimmer of hope slowly emerged in Qi Meng's eyes, which were wrapped in silver-white light. The slender hand in the sleeve gently clenched. In any case, this is a good start. Lin En slowly stood up, looking towards the north with an indifferent look, and the strong wind blew up his robe. He slowly drew out the white sword in his hand and said slowly, here it comes. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. I can see the laws of things. Author, Yitiao Xuanhuan. Chapter 196. Qimeng was startled, and as he looked towards the north was pitch black, with nothing. But the next moment, Qimeng suddenly felt a huge breath sweeping across the city like a gust of wind. That breath was completely different from the more than 30 top town generals she had killed before. He was even more powerful. Qimeng's face changed slightly, and she said, who is it? Lin En said slowly, did you retreat because you were afraid of me? So you chose to send a minion to test my power? But that's fine. Lin En raised his head and said expressionlessly, my bugs are hungry. The next moment, a thunderous roar suddenly came from the northern sky. Lin En. In an instant, all the clouds in the sky were blown away by hundreds of kilometers in that roar. The faces of the people in the whole city changed drastically, and they all raised their heads and looked towards the northern sky. They had already felt that in the north, a terrifying person was approaching their wind-riding city. The next moment, Li Yuanwu's face changed. In the northern sky, he saw a figure stepping on the void and walking towards here step by step. That figure was terrifying. Every step he took, the sky would crack, as if the earth was trembling. Who is that? Li Yuanwu trembled. He had never felt this kind of terrifying power in anyone. The next moment, Lin En soared into the sky and stood above the vast sky. He looked at the approaching figure indifferently and said lightly, "Where is Ling Changfeng? Don't you dare to come to see me." As soon as these words came out, Qi Meng suddenly raised her head and looked at Lin En in the sky with rapid breathing. Ling Changfeng, the head of the Ling family, one of the four most powerful world-class magic gods in Zhuzhou. Lin En is here. Is he waiting for that person? Is he crazy? Above the sky, Ling Zhang slowly walked out of the darkness. His expression was gloomy, and dark flames were jumping all over his body. At that moment, Qi Meng recognized the man with black flames all over his body. Ling Zhang, the biological brother of Ling Changfeng, the head of the Ling family, a terrifying ability user who has reached the peak of the magic god. The flames he controls are called black flames from hell. Once they are contaminated by his flames, those flames will be like maggots on the tarsal bones, and will burn your whole body bit by bit. Although he does not have the powerful strength of Ling Changfeng, he can still be at the forefront among the top combat forces in Zhuzhou. On the city wall, Li Yuanwu also recognized the man, and the expression on his face instantly became excited and trembling. "I know him. He is the younger brother of the head of the Ling family. He must be here to help us." A town general beside him clenched his fists and said, "How strong is he? Will he be a match for that Lin En?" Li Yuanwu said solemnly, "I don't know, I only know that he is very strong, very strong." Above the sky, strong winds blew. Lin En and Ling Zhang were facing each other. A flash of lightning streaked across the sky, covering their figures in a silver light. The surrounding atmosphere instantly condensed to the freezing point. Ling Zhang said solemnly, "Lin En, I came here just to tell you that arrogance also has a limit. Do you really think you are invincible in the world? Do you really think that no one in our Ling family can kill you?" A gust of wind blew by, and Lin En looked at him calmly and said slowly, "Isn't it?" Ling Jiang's eyes narrowed suddenly, and said, "Very good, it is indeed as arrogant as the legend, but I can tell you that there is no need for my eldest brother to take action personally. Killing you, I alone is enough." Lin En slowly raised his head, looked down at him expressionlessly, and said, "Many people have said this, but they are all dead." In an instant, Lin En's pupils suddenly shrank, and the dazzling purple light almost covered his entire eyeball in an instant. Boom! The terrifying aura instantly spread out from his body. The land within a radius of dozens of kilometers actually sank several meters at that moment, and even the entire city sank at that moment. Li Yuanwu and others standing on the city wall felt their qi and blood out of control, their internal organs vibrated, and they suddenly vomited a mouthful of scarlet blood. They looked at Lin En in the sky in horror, and felt even more trembling about him. Even Ling Zhang subconsciously stepped back a few steps, his face changed slightly, and his expression instantly became extremely solemn. Just based on the breath he exuded just now, he could already feel it. Lin En might become the most terrible enemy he has ever dealt with. If he doesn't go all out, he might really die. The next moment, a murderous intent suddenly flashed in his eyes. It can't be delayed any longer. He has to go all out to suppress Lin En in one fell swoop. In an instant, Ling Zhang soared into the sky, and the whole sky instantly burned with dark flames. The terrible heat wave rolled so hard that even hundreds of kilometers away could feel the terrible breath. His whole body was also burning with dark flames at that moment. In the rolling flames, he was like a devil crawling out of hell. "Lin En," he roared, pulling the flames all over the sky, and launched an extreme attack on Lin En. "Die!" Kameng's expression suddenly changed, and she instantly broke through the space and came to Lin En. Rolling cold currents radiated from her body, and the sword blade in her hand condensed into hard ice in an instant. "Lin, let me help you." But the next moment, she suddenly felt an iron-like hand grasping his shoulder. Under the strong force, she exclaimed, and her body was instantly pulled by the strong force and thrown directly backward. In the midst of the rolling heat wave, Lin suddenly raised his head, his eyes bursting with gloomy light. What a clumsy magic! Buzz! At that moment, the white sword in his hand suddenly vibrated at a high frequency. In the sword body, countless wheels of law lit up one after another, and the entire sword was activated by Lin En. At that moment, Lin En pulled out the sword blade and simply slashed it towards the sky. A long roar of swords. Then came the raging storm and air waves. Just as Kimeng stabilized her body, she was immediately blown hundreds of meters away by the terrifying air wave. The entire city trembled at that moment. Countless buildings were crumbling, glass across the city was shattered into pieces, and empty cars on the streets flew directly out of the city amid the rolling air waves. On the city wall, Li Yuanwu and others roared and tried to stand firm. One after another, soldiers screamed in terror and were swept away by the rolling air waves and flew out of the city of winds. It's like the sky is falling and the end is coming. This terrifying air wave lasted for several minutes, and the entire city was just a little bit close to being reduced to barren land. The next moment, the entire sky fell into silence. And at that moment, everyone in the city raised their heads and looked to the sky. In an instant, everyone stood there blankly. That's... I can see the laws of things. Author, Yitiao Xianyue. Chapter 197. Kimeng stared at the sky with a blank look, her lips parted, and she found that she couldn't say a word. Above the sky, a crack extending from the extreme south to the extreme north appeared in the vast sky. The whole sky seemed to be cut by something, divided into two halves from the middle. Corresponding to this was a huge bottomless gully on the ground. Similarly, the gully extended from their feet to the far north, and extended to the end that their eyes could not see. The sky and the earth seemed to be torn apart. Kimeng turned her head dully and looked at Lin En standing in the sky. He stood expressionlessly between the sky and the earth, and the white sword in his hand had no luster. But Kimeng knew clearly that the crack in the sky and the earth was his sword mark. What a terrible power, so powerful that it could even split the sky and the earth. Is this really the power of human beings? It was at this moment that she finally knew why Lin En had become so arrogant and arrogant now. That's right, if a person really has such terrible power, he can indeed despise everything in the world. He is indeed qualified to look down on anyone. And at the end of the crack between heaven and earth, Ling Zhang stood hollowly above the sky, and the dark flames on his body were like candlelight swaying in the wind. He accepted the baptism of this sword head-on, and only he could clearly feel the power of this sword. But he couldn't figure it out. Why? Why could he cause such huge destructive power in an instant, without any signs or fluctuations? He raised his head stiffly and murmured, "What kind of power is this?" Lin En said, "Isn't this what you have always longed for? You have been pursuing it hard, but it is difficult to reach it. You created magic to simulate the law. Isn't the ultimate position of God that you have been pursuing all your life just to control this power?" Lin En slowly raised his hand, looking at the flashing wheels of law lingering in his hand, his eyes became more and more indifferent. But unfortunately, that position has already been chosen. Instantly, Ling Jiang's heart was shaken, and he realized something. He finally knew. At this moment, he finally knew why he was so strong, why he could grow to such a level in such a short time. Law. He controls the power of the laws of the heavens. His starting point is the peak that all of them are desperately pursuing. He turned his head suddenly and screamed hysterically towards the distant north. "Absolutely, absolutely don't go south." But at that moment, the sword in Lin En's hand had already slipped out of his hand, and he only felt that his heart was hit hard by a heavy hammer. A sharp sound cut through the sky. He lowered his head stiffly, looking at the empty hole on his chest, and the light in his eyes slowly faded. His body fell heavily from the sky to the ground, and scarlet blood flowed out of his 7 orifices. He murmured, "Never, make an enemy of him. He is." The scarlet blood spread out from his body, dyeing the surrounding ground red. Between heaven and earth, there was silence. Qi Meng stared at Ling Jiang's body in a daze, then turned her head to look at Lin En, who was expressionless in the sky. For some reason, suddenly, even her heart felt a tremor. Because at that moment, his eyes seemed to have eliminated all the emotions that humans should have. Indifferent, just like this world, like an emotionless god. North, God's capital, Ling family. Ling Changfeng sat on the main seat in the hall, waiting gloomily. The seats around were filled with various powerful people from the Ling family. No one dared to speak, and everyone waited silently. They had been waiting here for several hours, and everyone was faintly uneasy in their hearts. They were waiting for news from the south. Although they could be sure that Ling Zhang could definitely kill Lin En easily. But as time went by, this affirmation slowly turned into anxiety and uneasiness. And at this moment, suddenly, a mobile phone ring broke the silence around. Everyone's eyes were immediately attracted by the mobile phone that Ling Changfeng placed on the table. "It's Ling Jiang's call." Ling Changfeng immediately picked up the phone and looked at his brother's name on it, and his solemn eyes slowly relaxed. Faintly, everyone in the audience seemed to be relieved. Their hearts, which had been tense, also got a temporary relaxation. "It seems that he succeeded." Patriarch and elder breathed a sigh of relief and looked at Ling Changfeng and said, "Hurry up and connect, we hope to hear the good news from him in person." Everyone looked over hopefully. Ling Changfeng nodded, and then pressed the answer button of the mobile phone. But the next moment, a voice came from the mobile phone that made everyone's heart fall into an ice pond instantly. "It's a pity, Ling Changfeng, I gave you a chance, but you didn't take it well. You just like to let your brother die, so now, as you wish." The moment the real voice sounded, the whole place changed color. Everyone stood up and stared at the mobile phone in Ling Changfeng's hand tremblingly. "Lin." This voice, this calm voice, they will never forget. How could he have Ling Jiang's phone number? Could it be that even a peak Dharma god like Ling Jiang couldn't compete with him? At this moment, the expression on Ling Changfeng's face, who was sitting on the main seat, was almost bleeding. His eyes turned extremely scarlet at that moment, and dense bloodshot eyes instantly covered the whites of his eyes. He looked at Lin En's expressionless face on the phone screen, and the murderous intention in his heart had almost turned into reality. "Lin En," he gritted his teeth and almost used all his strength to say these 2 words from his throat. "You killed my brother." Lin En said indifferently, "I have already told you, Ling Changfeng. If you want to kill me, then do it yourself. Of course, you can also continue to send men who you think can fight me to die, and I will satisfy you. But don't you think this is too boring? Because no matter who you send, the end result will be the same." His words were so calm, but in the ears of the people around him, they were filled with great sarcasm and contempt. That kind of arrogant voice instantly burned the eyes of everyone around him with blazing anger. They finally knew why their family leader was so angry. He doesn't treat them as human beings. At that moment, Ling Changfeng clenched his fists, and the exposed veins even caused traces of scarlet blood to flow out from under his skin. "Then let me kill you myself." Under that extreme anger, Ling Changfeng said these words solemnly. At this moment, the people around him once again felt the terrifying aura emanating from their family master. They knew that their family leader was really angry this time. No one dared to speak out to stop him anymore, because their hearts had also been replaced by anger and humiliation. Lin En said indifferently, "Very good, Ling Changfeng, then I will give you another chance to challenge me. The location will be in the wilderness 500 kilometers north of Changfeng City. I will wait for you there. Of course, you can also choose not to come. You can also wait for me to find you, but then you won't be the only one who will die. I can see the laws of things. Author, Yi Tiao Xuanhuan. Chapter 198. The extremely arrogant words ended in a calm tone. There was a click. Ling Changfeng crushed the phone in his hand and stood up slowly. The expression on his face had completely turned cold. Only his scarlet eyes showed the violence in his heart. Today is a war with the entire Jiuzhou region. I will kill him even if my entire Ling family falls apart. In an instant, the aura he spread caused the clouds above the entire divine capital to instantly turn into ashes. Chen family manor. A hurried man quickly opened the door and ran deeper into the manor with an extremely pale face. I have urgent news and must inform Mr. Chen Daoming immediately. Hurry. The man roared and quickly rushed into the main hall of the Chen family. In the conference hall, Chen Daoming leaned on his chair and sat in the main seat, surrounded by the powerful Dharma gods of the Chen family. A Dharma god frowned when he saw the man walking in a hurry and said, "What's going on? Why are you so panicked?" The man immediately knelt down, looked at Chen Daoming sitting on the main seat with a pale face, and said, "Sorry, Mr. Chen Daoming, our intelligence organization has just received the latest news. Venerable Lin An killed Ling Zhang, the biological brother of the head of the Ling family in Changfeng City in the south." The head of the Ling family was furious. They, the powerful men who have led the Ling family, have gone south. As soon as these words came out, the expressions of everyone in the hall changed instantly. Chen Daoming also suddenly opened his eyes, and the expression on his face instantly became gloomy. "What did you say?" A Dharma god suddenly stood up, looked at the man with a frown, and said, "Say it again." The man trembled and said, "The information is accurate. The entire Ling family has dispatched and is now on the way to Changfeng City." After receiving the news, the other two major families have also been led by two world-class magic gods, leading a large number of powerful men. We still don't know their purpose of going south, but the Ling family's purpose is our Lord Lin En. Everyone stood up and suddenly turned their heads to look at Chen Daoming, who was sitting on the main seat. Each of their eyes flashed with murderous intent and fighting intent. "This is so unreasonable," a Dharma god gritted his teeth and said, "I never expected that they would actually dare to attack our Chen family. Do they really want to start a war with us?" Another old man stood up suddenly and shouted, "Then we will fight them. Our Chen family has never been afraid of anyone in the whole world." Everyone present stood up. They looked at Chen Daoming sitting on the main seat, with fighting intent flashing in their eyes. "Master, give me the order." They are all veterans who followed Chen Daoming. When Chen Daoming had not yet sought a high position, they were Chen Daoming's subordinates. After so many years, although they are getting older, they will immediately serve the Chen family as long as Chen Daoming gives the order. And die. Chen Daoming was still sitting there. He looked deeply ahead and said, "Could it be that we have really reached the point of no return? Master! Master!" The surrounding Dharma gods were all stunned, gritted their teeth, and looked at Chen Daoming eagerly. Lin An's strength is obvious to all, and the most important thing is that their eldest lady Chen Qimeng is also in the south. If those people really decide to attack Lin An, then they will definitely not let their eldest lady go. Lin might be able to escape with her terrifying powers, but what about their eldest lady? Although she is already the Dharma god, judging from the death data of those saviors, it is obvious that there is still a big gap between their eldest lady and Lin En. Chen Daoming stood up suddenly and said solemnly, "Gather all the top generals of the Chen family for me. Everyone, follow me and go to the south." In the entire conference hall, all the Dharma gods and martial gods showed excited expressions. They felt that their fighting spirit that had been dormant for many years was burning brightly. Chen Daoming raised his head expressionlessly. "No, this war must not break out. Especially at this time, if the four major families go into full-scale war, even if they can win in the end, the Kyushu territory will be scarred. At the juncture of the second major change in the world, the Kyushu territory can no longer continue to be in turmoil. Let's go. To the south, to the north of Wind Riding City. Kimeng stared at Lin An standing in the sky. In her gaze, Lin stood there, his fingers flashing with divine light and orderly carving lines on the air. She couldn't see what he was carving, but the extremely complicated carving movements made her feel throbbing in her heart. What exactly is that? Kimeng raised her head, hesitated for a moment, and finally asked. Lin, what are you doing? Lin An said calmly, soon, a war will break out here. Since it is for war, we must be fully prepared. From the perspective of Lin's law, at this moment, this empty wilderness is densely covered with countless law wheels. They were engraved on the space and the earth by Lin An, intersecting with each other, shining with a dazzling cold light. He wants to build a killing array here. With the terrible power of the will of law as the carrier, this place has become a taboo place. Especially under the premise that he has been able to achieve permanent engraving, the will of law he engraved will stay here forever. As long as he gives an order, all the wheels of law will return to their original appearance. This will be Lin An's home court. Today, he will suppress the whole world here. With Lin An's last stroke, the last wheel of law has also been engraved. Suddenly, Chi Meng felt a huge pressure. She obviously didn't feel any fluctuations of power at all, but the fluctuations of palpitations made her feel hairy inside. Even the instinct of her body has driven her to leave this place quickly. Danger. It was an extremely dangerous feeling. Lin An said calmly, okay, it's done. Now I just have to wait for them to find me and then die here. Kimeng only felt her lips dry. She suddenly clenched the blade in her hand and gritted her teeth and said, I'll stay and help you. Lin An said lightly, there's no need. If you don't leave, I'll send you away myself. Kimeng raised her head and looked directly into Lin An's eyes without fear, saying, then tell me, did you let me leave because you were worried about my safety, or because you hated me and wanted to drive me away? If it's the latter, I'll disappear from your sight forever. Lin An fell silent. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. I can see the laws of things. Author, Yitiao Xuanhuan. Chapter 199. Just as Kimeng's eyes slowly melted, Lin An's voice came rolling from the sky. Stop being so sentimental, bye. If you think I hate you, that's right. Yes, I hate you, so I want you to disappear from my eyes. Do you know what to do now? There was no emotion in Lin's voice, just like the synthesized sound produced by a machine. But these words made Kimeng's heart hurt as if it had been pierced. She just stood there, staring blankly at Lin An's back. She said nothing, her heart seemed to have suddenly lost its blood supply and became empty. Then she turned decisively and headed south. Soon, her back disappeared into the endless dust. Lin An took a deep breath, raised his head and looked at the sky, the purple light in his eyes flickering on and off. The scarlet insect swarm seemed to sense his emotions, slowly surrounding him and making low hums. You don't need to comfort me, Lin An said lightly, her current strength is less than 1/3 of what it was in its heyday. In this state, she will only die if she stays. I don't want to have more people around me. A Tartar in need of shelter. Lin An suddenly raised his head, looked at the north, and said expressionlessly. This will be a feast of killing. I will let you join me in this battle and become stronger. If you don't have the power to dominate the world, how can you survive in the collapse of the future era? In an instant, the swarm of insects around him soared into the sky, covering the entire sky. They already understood what Lin meant. Devour. Endless devouring. Only by strengthening oneself is the highest rule of survival in this era. and everything else is false. The next moment, Lin An suddenly raised his head, and his eyes seemed to penetrate thousands of miles of mountains and rivers in an instant. Coming. The moment he said those two words, he was in the far north. Ling Changfeng suddenly raised his head and looked south. His scarlet eyes seemed to collide with Lin An's eyes across endless time and space. Behind him, strong men stood one after another, and the powerful power they exuded made the earth tremble. "Master, our people are all here," a martial god said solemnly. "Nothing needs to be stated explicitly anymore. Now that things have developed to this point, only a battle can bring this matter to a perfect resolution. The hatred that continues to spread must be liquidated today." The next moment, Ling Changfeng said solemnly, "Let's go." The dark night sky was filled with strong winds. In the wasteland north of Changfeng City, Lin An stood alone in the sky, his face still full of indifference. And just a few kilometers opposite him was the Ling family's top combat power. There were already thousands of them. Li Yuanwu stood on the wall of Changfeng City and looked to the north with trembling eyes. The fluctuations of power coming from the north already made him feel chills and tremors in his heart. "It's a world-class martial arts god, Ling Changfeng," a general said tremblingly. Li Yuanwu slowly clenched his fists and gritted his teeth and said, "I really can't imagine how confident he is that he dares to challenge the Ling family, which has a world-class martial god. Is he because of arrogance or because of he really has that strength? But no matter how it ends, if today's war breaks out, it will definitely cause huge waves in the entire Kyushu region. No. Even above the entire world, there will be a huge torrent, pulling the attention of the whole world. Will Lin An become famous in one battle, or will the Ling family crush him? But no matter what, after this battle, whether Lin wins or loses, he will leave a mark in history." The next moment, above the wilderness in the north, Ling Changfeng stepped forward step by step. He raised his head and looked at Lin An standing in the sky and said, "I came as promised. This time, I won't give you any chance to escape. No matter who you are, no matter whether your potential will bring about earth-shaking changes to the world, it's over. Everything about you will be today. The end." Lin An looked down at him indifferently and said, "Really? I really didn't expect that you would bring all of you in front of me, but it's okay, you will become the best nourishment for me and my bugs. I think I would be delighted to see your cold corpses lying before me." In an instant, the swarms of insects in the sky suddenly separated into swarms of scarlet swarms, which crashed onto the ground. Those swarms of insects continued to fuse and squeeze, and finally turned into insect men one after another whose whole bodies were wrapped in exoskeletons. They suddenly raised their heads, opened their scarlet mouthparts, and let out cruel roars at the crowd in the north. 1. 2. In just a few seconds, thousands of terrifying bug men appeared at Lin's feet. No one knows how strong these insect men will be. But no one dared to underestimate them. Since they merged with the magic wheel, Lin has no longer suppressed their growth and evolution. Especially tonight, they followed Lin and devoured hundreds of town generals. Their genetic sequences, their life wheels, and their flesh and blood have all become the nourishment for their evolution. Ling Changfeng suddenly raised his head, and in an instant, all the muscles in his body swelled up. He looked in the direction of Lin An and said gloomily, "Kill." Without any words, hundreds of strong men of the Ling family raised their heads in an instant, and the breath emanating from them actually directly caused the entire sky to collapse. The next moment, amid endless roars, they launched a charge towards Lin An. This team composed of martial gods and top town generals, this is the first time in history. It can be clearly seen that they almost turned into a torrent, and wherever they passed, the entire ground was crushed and sunken. This kind of war is bound to be remembered by the whole world. The next moment, hundreds of strong men of the Ling family rushed together with Lin An's insect army. The shrill screams accompanied the roars of the insects. Looking down from the high night sky, this place has turned into a burning battlefield. And the next moment, a figure soared into the sky from the battlefield. His whole body was surrounded by blood light, stepping on the void, and his steps were disillusioned. His pupils covered with blood were filled with dense and ferocious. Lin En. I will kill you today. This was the first time he had taken action since he got a high position in Zhu domain in all these years. The power of a world-class martial god is such that a drop of blood can shatter mountains and rivers, and a punch can destroy the sky. It is extremely rare in the world to see a world-class martial god take action personally. In the distance, Li Yuanwu looked at the figure tremblingly and said, Lin En, he is really too arrogant. He has no idea how terrible the power of a world-class martial god can be. This time, he must die. At that moment, Lin En, who had been standing on the sky, said slowly, Since I asked you to challenge me, I naturally have a way to deal with it. Do you really think that a world-class martial god will not die? I can see the laws of things. Author, Yitiao Xianyue. Chapter 200. In an instant, at that moment, Ling Changfeng's body entered the range of the killing array arranged by Lin En. Then Lin opened the eyes of Law, and at that moment, dazzling purple light burst out from his eyes. The countless wheels of rules that he had engraved around him before were activated in an instant, as if they had been summoned, and lit up with dazzling light. In an instant, Ling Changfeng felt the changes in the energy around him, and his expression changed instantly. What's this? The next moment, there was a loud click. The space around him was like glass. The space around him instantly shattered into countless fragments, and his body fell into the torn space cracks in an instant. Seeing this scene, the expressions of everyone in the Ling family changed instantly. Clan leader. Clan leader. Master. Only those who have reached the top level of general strength know what kind of dangers are contained in the chaotic realm in the space cracks. There is no order there, only endless spatial turbulence. They are like blades that can cut into pieces, capable of tearing any matter that falls into them into pieces, and then taking them to the far end of space. But Ling Changfeng is a world-class martial arts god after all. Ordinary people would probably die the next moment if they stepped into the space crack, but from the cracked gap, Ling Changfeng could still rush towards the crack crazily, wrapped in endless blood. Lin. How dare you plot against me? I will make your life worse than death. Ling Changfeng roared angrily. He never expected that Lin En would set such a trap here. Hit him into the space crack. If he hadn't been a world-class martial god, he would have been cut into countless pieces by the space turbulence. But despite this, he was still greatly affected by the space turbulence. He had to mobilize part of his blood energy to offset the damage caused to him by the spatial turbulence. Lin En stood indifferently in the sky, looking at Ling Changfeng in the crack in the void, and said, In order to kill you, I have prepared many back UPS. If I can devour you, my power will be greatly improved again. The next moment, a biting coldness shot out of Lin's eyes. Will of gravity. In an instant, Ling Changfeng, who was in the turbulence of space, suddenly felt a huge pulling force coming from behind him. He turned his head suddenly, and his expression changed instantly. I saw a huge gravitational vortex suddenly appearing in the endless space turbulence. The huge gravity even caused the surrounding space turbulence to be pulled there. From the perspective of the eye of law, one can clearly see that an extremely complex will of law is engraved there. It is the will of gravity. And this time the will of gravity is more powerful than any will of gravity that Lin has used before. Even at the moment when the will of gravity was activated, the center of the will of gravity collapsed directly, forming a miniature black hole in the turbulent flow of space. Ling Changfeng roared, and his body was instantly pulled towards the gravitational vortex by the powerful gravity. Lin En said indifferently, This is a gift I specially prepared for you. With a gravity of 100,000 times the Earth, they will lock you in the turbulence of space. So what if you are a world-class martial god? Ling Changfeng roared, his eyes already bloodshot. He turned his head suddenly, and with a punch filled with endless blood, he instantly flew towards the vortex of gravity. Then I will smash all your arrangements. But the next moment, his punch that could make the mountains collapse and the earth split went straight through the gravitational stance, without having any effect on the stance. On the contrary, because of his punch, he was instantly exposed to 100,000 times gravity. In this position, it is difficult to move forward. How could it be? His expression changed drastically. Lin An said indifferently, "It's useless, Ling Changfeng, if you are within the space, you may be able to break my restriction by breaking the carrier of my will of law, but this is the endless void outside the space, your power is still it's not powerful enough to penetrate even the void." Ling Changfeng roared hysterically, and all the blood in his body burned. He was actually holding onto the shackles of a position with 100,000 times the gravity, stepping on the turbulent flow of space, and walking towards the rift in space step by step. Very good, but you still underestimate the power of the world-class martial god. His eyes were blood red and he said, "My blood is endless, my power can make the continent collapse, and my body is indestructible. It's just 100,000 times gravity, do you really think you can do anything to me?" Lin An said calmly, "Then, what about 1,000,000 times?" As soon as these words came out, Ling Changfeng's expression suddenly changed. At that moment, he instantly felt that the gravitational restraint behind him instantly surged about 10 times again, reaching 1,000,000 times gravity. Even the surrounding space turbulence was distorted, and even the space barriers collapsed. His body kept making rattling sounds, and under the influence of that force, every step he took was as difficult as climbing to the sky. Ling Changfeng looked up to the sky and roared. The invisible chains behind him tightly bound his body, making it difficult for him to move forward. Lin An looked at him indifferently, then slowly stretched out his hand and said, "I said that in order to kill you, I prepared a lot of backup tactics, but what you are experiencing now is just one of the countless restrictions." The next moment, Ling Changfeng's expression changed drastically again. He suddenly felt a huge, indescribable gravitational force coming from all directions. The next moment, he suddenly saw 16 huge gravitational vortices appearing simultaneously in 16 directions centered on him. 1,000,000 times the Earth's gravity coming from different directions acted on him instantly. His body was stretched straight in an instant, and under the influence of the 16 gravitational fields, it was like being torn apart by 5 horses, pulling him in all directions. Ah! While he was roaring hysterically, his body was suddenly stretched out by the huge gravity. The terrifying gravitational force coming from all directions almost seemed to tear his body into pieces. He was firmly bound in the center by the large formation composed of 16 gravitational fields, unable to move. Ling Changfeng roared ferociously. Lin An said indifferently, "I have accurately calculated the position of each stand. After these 16 stands are activated, they will reach a delicate balance at your location. They will exert all their power on you evenly. No matter which direction you move from, you will be bound by 15 other gravitational fields at the same time. Ling Changfeng, I have worked very hard to kill you. Lin. You have to die." Ling Changfeng continued to stimulate his blood energy, trying to free himself from the constraints of the huge gravitational field. Even his facial features were twisted into a ball under the huge traction.